Bringing spirit into the room. Yeah. Oh, fire. The smoke alarm is definitely going to go off. It went off from me after I took a bath. So.
But do you feel cleaner with the smudging?
Yes, and the sound will be very clean when it occurs.
When it alarms on us.
Yeah.
Well, Benoit Forêt, or Forest, or how else? What else could we say?
Forest.
Welcome to the Foundations podcast.
Yeah, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
You are a good-looking guest.
I appreciate the compliment.
Yeah. I like good-looking guests.
In good company, my friend.
Yeah. So, much to discuss. This channel, this podcast is a place to discuss many things. Spirituality, life purpose, life problems, world order, inner journey, outer journey.
Nonchalant.
All sorts of things.
Yeah, just.
But I wanted to have you on the show because you are a relatively new friend in my life. And we're finally connecting one-on-one over the last little while. And I've connected with you at a lot of the community gatherings, which has been a really important part of my journey in the last 18 months and many people's. What would you like to talk about today? Where should we start?
Yeah, well, all these themes that are coming up, really what we discussed a little bit earlier is the language of symbols as this language that's continuously streaming towards us.
This one that we're using right now.
Sure. It could be words, it could be body language, it could be color, it could be, our environment, whatever's in the environment. But what I noticed, interestingly, we were just talking about how we use language and how our language describes our relationship to the environment or the world or the universe.
Yeah.
And basically describes how we see ourselves in the universe. So it's interesting that I found even what you just shared earlier about you connecting with me at past events. Yeah.
Oh, the way I said it.
Yeah.
So I connected with you.
Right.
I didn't say you connected with me.
Or we connected. It's just like, it's noticing those little things, right? I seem to and this is what helps me in my practice as a counselor, is to notice the wording that people use automatically, because it's like the language of the subconscious that describes an experience, and often those experiences are a little emotional or not necessarily thought out, and then they just come through, and noticing the types of words that are used can tell a lot about someone's state, the way that they are considering themselves in relationship to the environment, etc. So yeah, that's kind of how I like to play with people's expressions and my expression, of course. So.
Yeah, I mean, with that being said, do you think English is a very good or even advanced language, or it's so universal, the language, right? I think it's probably one of the most spoken languages, I think, with a few others. And is that for what reason? If it's not a very advanced language, it's almost misleading sometimes, is what I think. Because of those things, it misleads the experience sometimes.
I'm not a linguist. I haven't studied these things.
Yeah.
So I can't speak certainly about prevalence or frequency of use and all of that stuff, nor about is it a good or a bad language?
Yeah.
from my understanding, English is a practical language. And an example that I heard recently about being able to ask for something without formulating a correct, like a correct syntax sentence.
Yeah.
Like, I would like a glass of water is how you would correctly say what you want.
Yeah.
But someone who's learning English can also say, I water. And you understand what they mean.
Yeah, you do.
In a basic way, you can understand that they would probably like water.
So it makes it kind of easy to learn.
And perhaps why it's so widely practiced around the world. And again, I haven't studied these things, so I don't know what it is about how a sentence is structured that makes it easy. Whereas in French, which is my mother tongue, there are many sounds that mean different things. So there needs to be like a certain pronunciation to understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
That is a little bit more technical in a way.
Otherwise it gets misperceived or misconstrued. Or
Perhaps.
Yeah.
Perhaps.
So the language I kind of hear you talking about is symbols, the language of symbols. And I don't, we haven't gone too deep into that, but I find that fascinating because it's very much a language. It's almost the language of creation, it's symbols and patterns and...
Yeah.
What's important to know about symbols?
Well,
what's fascinated you anyway? About the world of symbols. It's like subconscious world almost. It's like they're speaking to you, but like you might not really notice that way. Especially here in like Canada and like Western world, I don't know how tuned we are to the symbols and their power.
And so the first thing I would say about the language of symbols is that it's based on a universal language, the language of creation. And when we move through, for example, what numbers represent as like the one, the whole. Of course, the zero has a lot of symbolism.
Very much.
The beginning and the end, the everlasting,
the eternal.
Infinity, exactly.
Yeah.
The one represents all, and then two represents the all meeting itself. The three represents the two creating something new, right? So, and you can go on, and these are all symbols, representative of creation becoming in ever complexifying degree.
Right now you're like talking about just mathematics and like the actual numerology of symbols as well.
And those concepts and those symbols represent themselves in geometry. So you've got the circle, you've got the line, the triangle, the square, etc. Pentagon, hexagon. And so each of those have meaning when you look at like the evolution of creation in a sense.
So with all these different, because you know that I've practiced and studied Taoism, and in that there is numerology, which I have been trained in. Is there is there alignment between all these other, like astrology also follows the numerologies, and like are these all in alignment with just different language describing them slightly differently, or I don't know if there's conflict between them when it comes down to symbols and math? Because they're like frequency essentially.
And that's a great question. Ultimately, I feel as though all languages are describing the same things. We're just using different sounds or combinations of lines and shapes or sounds to describe these things.
But isn't something more accurate? It's kind of like
Perhaps.
Om, like Om. That's this. And obviously, if we do that in a group, we're all going to have a slightly variation of that that, but there's power in every single one of those voices. And when you bring them together, it's really powerful.
Yeah. And it sounds like you're referring to the Om as like a, it's a truth in like,
I'm not even sure, but I know just how I feel when I do it. Because they say it's the cosmic sound, and it's emitting a frequency, which I'm sure is attached to a numerology. Like maybe it's the 0. Who knows? I actually don't. That's an interesting thing to think about right now. What is being emitted, or is it capturing every single piece of the numerology, 1 through 0 to 9? Right?
Yeah, that would be fascinating to study and look into.
Because it's supposed to be the most holistic sound thing you can vibrate at through because it starts down in the bottom
all the way to the front,
all the way up to the It's going and it's moving through everything.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why. So I haven't really studied it, to be honest.
Right.
Just
and that's
feels
how
really good.
That's how I understand it as well. Is it's encapsulating all of the sounds from bottom to top.
Yeah.
In that order, and therefore is a representation of holism, whereas other sounds are more specific in frequency, in tone, and whatnot. And
so with everything going on in the world right now, do you kind of attune to the symbology? Like, can you see all the symbology and like kind of forecast through that?
The symbology of what?
Just the changes happening on our planet, like, and the political stuff. There's like a lot of symbolism people have talked about within all of it.
Yeah, totally.
Do you see that stuff? I don't think I see it.
I tend to look at the symbols being used to deliver messages, for sure. So,
can you give like an example of something like that? Symbolism used to deliver messages.
Yeah. We see it often in the media, certain colors being used to promote certain messages.
Right.
Flags, for example, the amount of stars or crosses or, one symbol that we see often represented through entertainment, the entertainment business, is like a hand over the eye or covering the eye. And it's representing, and that's an occult symbol of power, dominance, of having access to deeper sight. And
by blocking an eye, it implies access to deeper sight.
It represents the one eye, but it also represents being blinded. So there's an interesting like dichotomy in that symbol that is almost like inherently confusing. Where you're showing that like I don't know and I know, which is a paradox of life, as we talk about like exploring life. And
it's the great paradox.
Yeah.
It's all happened and I don't know how or why.
But symbols have been used throughout the history of language and communication.
Yeah.
And just like any tool can be used to further a specific end, and usually is. I mean, you speak for a reason, usually. Even if it's just babbling, perhaps you just want to be heard. So there's an end to the why you use communication, why you communicate. And some people use symbols knowing their subconscious impact. Advertising is that. Look at the amount of symbols that look like a sun or that look like a star.
Yeah.
Even though they're like a little skewed or like it's a star cut in half or there's like lines missing or things like that, it alludes to the star, which is higher learning, like wisdom from above. And so it implies that this product is a very wise product to invest in.
Higher wisdom kind of product.
And that's how often symbols are used. And I would argue that most of the people who create these symbols don't necessarily know the explicit meaning behind them and like the esoteric meaning behind the star and the sun and the moon, for example.
Symbol at Foundations is a tree of life.
Yeah.
And like, I feel like I randomly picked it. I was like, this looks great. What is that tree of life to you? You know what I liked about it? I liked because it goes, the root system in the symbol for the foundations is like, it goes into the ground.
Yeah.
And it's the same shape as the top.
Yeah, totally.
Which blooms out and has fruit on the top.
Yeah.
But then the roots are stretching down in the same patterns.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, as above, so below maybe.
Exactly.
And, well, I'm just dissecting this as I go right now.
Nice. Good job.
I also noticed just now that we're actually both wearing the same necklace.
Yeah.
And we didn't plan that.
Well, I did.
Oh, you did? You
Yeah.
son of a gun.
Well, I saw you wearing it earlier and I'm like, mine was broken. So I fixed it.
But I got this when I graduated in the medicine wheel in the Shamanic Yoga Institute. This was given to me by my teacher.
Yeah.
And I actually have not even asked what this means. But I sure like it. And you're wearing it. What the hell are we representing right now? What are we trying to...
Now, if anyone knows this better than me, please correct me if I'm wrong. But my understanding is that this
We'll get it in the comments.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. My understanding is this is called the chakruna, which is the bridge between the lower, middle, and higher worlds. And that's what this kind of staircase symbol represents. And the center, the hole in the center is us. And so it really is representative of the bridge, which is very similar to the tree of life.
Yeah, totally.
Right. So the symbolism can be traced back to like a more ancient origin. Yeah. And it's represented by in different ways, just like this and the tree of life represent very similar themes, but are different symbols.
At least this one has a staircase. It's maybe easier to climb.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. and perhaps it speaks more to, I don't know, the human journey or the soul's journey rather than the tree of life, which is representative perhaps more of
nature's journey.
Or the bridge that nature creates for us to access, right?
Like
so they're all nuanced and they all have their specifics and their general meanings because there are layers to symbols as well. Yeah. And so I'm reminded of a quote by Robert Moss, who is a dream worker. So he interprets dreams and has written a lot about these kinds of the dreamscape and those realms. And he encourages us to walk through life as though we lived in a forest of symbols. Because the universe is constantly speaking to us and communicating with us through symbols.
Everything about it.
Everything, all the time. Right? Because everything comes from the same source, which is creation. And so if I'm walking down the street and, you and I can be walking down the street.
Yeah.
And then we just walk down the street and then we stop and we say, hey, what did you notice on our walk? I'll say, oh, I noticed the birds chirping. I noticed a bee flying towards a flower, or the leaves moving in the wind, right? I noticed these things.
I'm like, I noticed my ankle's sore.
Yeah, exactly. My ankle hurts. There are like these kids laughing and they were obnoxious or whatever it is. We all notice different things. And that's our own filter of how the universe is speaking, and we're capturing a different facet of that experience that's happening in the moment. And so I like this quote from Robert Moss because it continuously reminds me that wherever my attention goes is that item, that object that my being is resonating towards, that can teach me something or that can show me my next stage in growth or evolution. Yeah. That shows me what's in my unconscious or subconscious that is being communicated to, that I'm noticing. Even though I'll notice the bee on the flower, on my walk, I may not stop and ponder and think, oh, the bee is about, represents work and community and devotion and all of these things.
Sure.
But I may not stop and do that in that moment. But I find that, when I do stop at the end of my week, for example, or I'm going through some challenge and I want some clarity and I'll sit, oftentimes I'll kind of get the insight. And then I'll think, oh, that's why I saw the bee earlier. And that's why I stubbed my toe. And that's why that billboard caught my attention.
Right.
Those were all my subconscious trying to pick up the messages that were around to bring attention to this thing I'm moving through. And here I am at the crux of my challenge looking for guidance. And it's been there all along.
So how about like recently? What's something recently what was the symbol that popped you into the next insight that informed the next action?
Oh, wow.
Something like, 'cause you said it's happening all the time, every day, and then something.
Yeah.
So when was maybe the last one you can think of right now?
I mean, our conversation this morning, I think I even...
At breakfast.
Yeah, yeah. I think I brought it up, even the police officer that came over.
Yeah.
Right? And
came over to us.
He came over to our table out of like
lost.
a group of tables. And he parks his car, he steps out of his car, walks straight to us. So at first I was like, shit, did you like see us walk out of your vehicle and you're parked weird? Or like, is there something specific that he wants to talk to us about?
Yeah.
But no, he was looking for guidance. He was looking for our perspective.
For help with
which
his
is
problem.
Hilarious because here we are talking about how perspective is so important and how we need to own our own perspective. And that's our contribution to the world. And here he is asking about someone in a position of authority is asking
and
us.
we could have been sitting there, and depending on who we are, like one person's like, how can I help you, officer? Genuinely. Other person's like, what did I do, officer?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so I noticed that, for example, as like as I move more deeply into who I am and my being, and I'm trusting myself more, I'm recognizing my authority of creating my life.
Right.
And as a symbol of authority that is coming to me to ask me for my perspective, it was like an affirmation that, I am becoming an authority for myself in my life.
It was a big breakfast.
Yeah. In the moment.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's why I love it. It's like, I'll, if I have the capacity to slow down and to just say, that was an interesting noticing, or that was an interesting interaction. What was special about it? Or what got activated in me that feels like I either want to push it away or I'm drawn to.
Yeah.
And then I can start to like, okay, well, police represents this. These are some words that are associated to it. Which ones resonate, which ones don't. And of course, this can take time. I feel as though I've developed a practice where symbols speak to me a little bit more quickly now. And so I see the moon, for example, and all sorts of things come up that could remind me of what the moon is representing to me in this moment or trying to communicate with me in this moment.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for asking.
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
I want to pivot here so you're a counselor.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you kind of are practicing and studying right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know much about counseling because you kind of did it more like you went through professional counseling.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know much about the whole counseling industry and like what is happening there. What I do know is I know a lot of people in my life who go through counseling. And I do coaching with people,
right.
And I don't know how much of what I do is even relevant for how counselors do things.
Right. Well, I think there are a lot of similarities between what coaching and counseling can offer. Mainly the therapeutic aspect of being in relationship. I think that's
yours is it'd be called by title therapeutic counseling.
What I studied specifically, yes.
Therapeutic counseling, as opposed to what other kind of counseling are like? Is there a whole bunch?
You
can like
clinical counseling, I suppose, would be one other way of describing a branch of counseling.
Yeah,
just counseling as in and of itself. What's unique about the the education that I got is the therapeutic aspect touches on going through processes to access the underlying and somatic impact that our lives have had on us up to this moment. And so it's moving through process and making space for that kind of energy, the emotional energies, to release.
That's what you're helping people with.
Yes. And so in that capacity, there are specific processes we do somatically, and inviting that emotion to come to the surface, as opposed to simply relying on talking our problems out, or like cognitive behavior modification, which is also considered a therapy, but it's mainly kept in the speaking, whereas the therapy that I'm practiced at also taps into the somatic and the emotional piece.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So with all of the sessions and with everything you've done so far in the whole like realm of counseling and stuff, what are some of the patterns and trends you're noticing? Like, what are people struggling with today? Like, maybe more of a general sense, but also just like, what's going on? Mm-hmm. What do people need help with when they go to counseling? Is there like, what I mean?
Yeah. Well, the therapeutic relationship is a very unique one based on each counselor and what they can provide. So, usually there are themes that arise in a counselor's experience of their clients that also reflect where the counselor is at on their journey.
Interesting.
Which I find so beautiful. And, this understanding that all healers and guides and teachers and coaches and counselors are sent the people that also teach them where they are at and how they can grow in their own practice. Yeah. So in that sense, it's kind of subjective what arises for people, So I find similarity with each of the clients that I've had, which is really beautiful, because I get to then contemplate how I was impacted by a session, what I'm learning from them, and the wisdom that comes through their expression of their challenges. And in general, I would say, and really what I aim to help people with, is to accept wherever they're at on their journey and to love themselves more deeply. And there's a big lack of that I see in our society.
Inability to love themselves deeply.
Yeah.
That's been my challenge. Like
your personal challenge, or what you've met with clients as well, or?
No, personal.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's basically the commitment of my life now.
Yeah.
And it's amazing, but there's so much to love.
Of course.
There's so much to that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And really that's like the journey of life, is to expand our capacity to love each thing that comes into our experience.
Yeah.
Each encounter, each person, each circumstance, as they reflect to us who we are moving through life. And so this is where I will, pay attention to the events and the themes that the client will bring up. Look at the symbolism behind all of that, because that's what's present for them. That's the language that's being communicated by their subconscious, by the universe. And then look at what it is that they're here to learn to love more, because that's where there's an impasse. And
100% agree.
And so oftentimes when we get to that impasse, there's like a mechanism in our psyche that prevents us from being able to access that next step for whatever reason, whether it's a fear, even just an insecurity. Shame is often associated to these moments, where at some point in our lives we learned to not allow this type of expression or thought.
And then you're blocked. Something's
and then
blocked.
It's blocked. And this is one of the ways that these things become inaccessible to us in our experience. Sometimes it's also epigenetic in the sense that it's happened to our ancestors and has been kind of codified in our DNA and then comes up based on something that, again, like that language of symbolism activates that DNA and it's invited to express itself, but can't, even though we don't have like a literal recollection of that in our conscious memory. So that's the next step to accept our own experience in that moment. Like an example would be you face this challenge of, feeling unmet by a parent. Oh, I'm having a lot of struggle with my mother right now, for example. She just doesn't seem to see how much I've grown or what I'm really interested in life. And so that becomes an opening to say, well, what is there about yourself that you at some point in your life didn't allow to be expressed because you wanted to keep receiving love from your mother?
Right. It's like this trade-off. And
Yeah.
I want this, but then I'll block this.
Yeah.
How do you hold all of it?
Yeah. And at the time that the block happened, we didn't know any better because we're still learning about life and relationships. And of course, our mother is a pivotal source of information, if not the most important one.
And a pivotal source of love.
Yeah. And so any preconceived notions or beliefs that the mother has directly impacts how the child believes they need to move through life and what they can express about themselves and what they can't express. And that varies, depending on the child's personality. And
now that you're bringing this up too, it's like I've gone all over the place, done so many ceremonies, gone to and so much of it just comes back to what those parents did. Right?
Yeah.
Like whatever they did, those early traumas all kind of stem from there a lot of the time.
Yeah.
What did my mom say? What did my dad say or do?
Yeah. And
because that's where you came from on this level.
Yeah. And most of the time they mean well. They perhaps experienced a trauma in their lifetime of feeling abandoned, and they want to ensure that their child doesn't feel that.
So they're overbearing.
So, sure, that's a good example. And so they'll give all the love, but then the child's personality actually wants more freedom. Whereas the mother's like, no, I'll be there for you no matter what. And the kid's like, I need to figure out life on my own. Like, that's my soul path right now, and you're preventing me from that. And that creates a rift. And it's not because parents are ill-meaning. It's just the nature of those subconscious patternings that get passed down because the parent believes they know what's best for the child. And sometimes they're right, sometimes they're not right. That's all. And the moments that they're not right is when one of those blocks can occur. And so the invitation is to look back at the block and to recognize that though love may not seem to have been accessible in that moment, we can infuse that memory with love with our current expression of self.
We just can. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can do it.
Yeah. As we revisit that memory in a counseling session, we say, oh, that 7-year-old that blocked that off because they felt they couldn't speak their truth.
So it's it's almost the exact same as like when you go and work with ayahuasca or any of these medicines, they just take you right back to those experiences in vivid detail. And then you redo it with a whole bunch of love because the plants just inform it all. And then then you're different. Something happens.
Potentially, not always.
Not always.
You can go through that experience and not fully integrate it or acknowledge that it's a real part of you that needs to be looked at. I hear of a lot of people who are kind of like addicted to those experiences of plant spirit medicine. They'll continuously go believing
the
that
integration is missing.
Yeah.
Why does that happen, do you think?
Why does what happen?
So you're saying, is it the integration, the missing ingredient there? Or like, why would that happen that people have to keep redoing or going back?
Well, everyone has a different journey. So I don't want to speak generally about people's relationship with plant spirit medicine. Totally. Everyone's got their own thing. And there's also the thrill-seeking aspect and kind of the addictive personality aspect to psychedelic experiences. The high, the experience of it is so profound that there can be an outsourcing and say, oh, the plant is healing me. Whereas the lesson that I believe we're all here to learn is that we heal ourselves by loving ourselves. So whatever experience is shown through a psychedelic experience is similarly to the symbols that are being spoken or communicated in our day-to-day life. The plant spirit medicine shows us that next part that we need to actually engage and deal with and integrate, which means walking differently, consciously in our lives. Now that we've seen, for example, in my journey with ayahuasca, I had a very powerful experience that showed me that it wasn't okay. I had a belief that it wasn't okay for me to throw up. You know, in my childhood, I had a lot of car sickness. Well, in life.
Oh.
So,
okay.
So I was young. I had a lot of ear infections. I got car sick a lot. And so throwing up was a point of shame. Whereas the medicine was inviting me to release and to purge, because symbolically throwing up, and in the ayahuasca experience, it's more than just a physical experience. It's an energetic one as well, which of course they're all connected. I needed to move beyond that block before I could allow the medicine to go deeper into deeper layers and show me other things that I was meant to see at that time. And so I remember this scene where I was surrounded with all of the women in my life, my mother, aunts, sisters, grandmothers, etc., and women I didn't recognize, but I knew were all part of my tribe or my ancestry, who were holding space for me, silently loving me as I purged. And I was crying, and I was just feeling so much shame about doing this in front of them. But that's the beauty of any therapeutic experience, is that you're not just understanding what needs to change, you're actually reliving it with a new energy, with a new awareness. And so I was throwing up and purging while receiving love and acceptance. Okay? And so that's the experience that the plant spirit medicine was able to provide for me. And then I needed to move forward in my life and continue to allow purging to happen when it needed to happen. Because if I revert to, no, it's shameful to vomit, then I haven't integrated that lesson completely.
Totally.
And some people need multiple exposure in order to really be able to integrate the experience. So it's not to say like, don't go and do multiple ceremonies by any means. Everyone has their own journey.
No, but you changed your relationship to that thing. It was shameful, and now it's some level of healing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
My best example of that would be crying. I learned to cry at 28. And I don't think I actually had thought about it very consciously, like, oh, crying is for weak men or something like that. I don't think I thought about it consciously, but I didn't cry. Well, why not? It's just like it was unconsciously, I didn't have access to this thing. And then today, it's amazing. Like it's like when I actually get to have a release for whatever reason, it's always like a joyful, like a beautiful, it feels right.
Cathartic.
Yeah. It feels right when it happens. I don't force it. I'm not trying to cry, but when I do, it's like I'm not blocked about it. Like, okay, we're going to do that. And then it passes through and there's no charge around it. Like,
so it sounds like you had a block, even though it was subconscious.
Exactly. I had an unconscious block most likely, because otherwise how could I not be crying for like a decade? Stuff happens in a decade.
Of course. Yeah. Sadness occurs. So,
well, it didn't though, because I guess I blocked it.
Even your experience of your own sadness.
Even today, I don't really have any relationship with anger. But one thing I have started doing in the last few years is just screaming. I don't know if it's angry, but it sure feels good. Right? Even in men's group, just screaming. What did we scream yesterday at men's group? It was freedom.
I am free.
I was like, can we scream I am free?
Yeah.
And just like being fucking loud and just like, like going nuts. And that feels amazing just to be like,
yeah.
Or like when we go dancing and stuff now, I'll just get on the floor and like scream and act like an animal. Not because I'm angry, but like it's still tapping into like that aggression. Because anger is it's aggressive.
And anger and sadness and joy.
I just haven't, And I don't know if maybe it's a good thing. I'm not sure, but like authentic angry at somebody, I haven't had it I don't even remember.
Yeah.
I don't know if I remember an experience.
It's
but I don't have access, maybe. I don't know.
And it's, again, different for every person. It will arise and move as you're ready to, if it even needs to. Like,
yeah. But building off that, I had a few experiences this summer in my company where the response you would most likely expect would have been anger. And it actually just, maybe it transmuted to sadness. Like instead of being angry, I was sad about it.
And that's from the therapeutic counseling perspective is a healthy way to move through those layers of emotion.
Would anger be lower on a spectrum than sadness? Like, how like shame I know is quite at the bottom in terms of frequency.
Yeah.
I don't know where anger and sadness goes in this.
That's not necessarily the lens I'm looking at it through, because I'm not familiar with where they're positioned on that spectrum. I know which you're speaking about.
Okay, sorry.
I forget the name.
Me too.
but I'm referring to, like, anger would be more of the surface reaction that protects oneself, because anger is empowering. Right? It gives you access to strength and to clarity and to action.
Yeah.
That protects you often a part that's very vulnerable and sad and afraid. And so anger is generally like a reactive response to feeling powerless.
Right.
So if again, from the therapeutic counseling perspective, you can...
So I'm just skipping the anger, going right to the sadness. Maybe.
Arguably, yeah.
Maybe.
And if you're able to do that and recognize, while still taking action, to, I guess, allow that movement of energy to happen, whether you need to cry or you need to speak to someone about how you're feeling, or talk about how you were impacted by someone else's action. Those are all healthy ways to move that energy, as long as you're not blaming, which is kind of the anger aspect. Is like, you did this. I'm angry because you did this. And it evoked an experience in me that I don't like. And so as you're deepening your relationship to crying and sadness, perhaps that allows you to mitigate your anger and how it's expressed, is, how I would look at it. And, maybe there will be another circumstance in your life where anger will become very helpful, or will create this whole other realm of interaction that you're going to be like, what? I've never engaged with anger, and now it's coming up, and I don't know what to do. And you got to learn
like
through
a baby,
that.
Because I don't have experience with it.
Yeah.
And now that we're talking about this, I've only seen my dad angry twice. Ever.
Yeah.
That I remember.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't have an angry. My dad was he's very happy and joyful. And
so perhaps he
so
showed you
modeling wise.
Yeah, totally.
Right. I just didn't see anger in action.
Yeah. And maybe he showed you a healthy way. Maybe he didn't. Maybe he was very repressed.
Maybe. Right?
But it at this point in your journey, you're noticing that anger isn't really a part of your expression. But it's not really causing separation in your relationships so much.
It is not causing me problems not getting angry. No.
Yeah.
Now I'm just screaming when I dance.
Because you're an assertive person.
Good. I'm an assertive person, yeah.
And that's kind of the more accepted way that anger is expressed. It's assertiveness. I know who I am. I know what my values are. I will stand for those. I know what I'm going to do. I know what I'm going to do. Which anger often propels us to do the thing we know we need to do, but we just don't do.
Right. Gets you riled up.
So for some people, anger is healthy because it brings movement when there's no movement.
Yeah.
And for some people, it's a defense mechanism to prevent recognizing their own vulnerability or shame or sadness, because they just don't know how to deal with that. And so they'd rather stay in anger. For other people, it's like an addictive response that moves endorphins and gets all of this inner chemistry going that feels good and gives a sense of power and control, right? So anger isn't good or bad. It's a part of our experience. Sometimes it isn't. For some people, it's a big theme in their life. For other people, it's not. So yeah, it's something for you to explore when it arises, when you feel that you want to explore it,
Do I want to explore that? Well, not right now. No, not right now.
Yeah.
But it is super interesting to contemplate, because I know how much my life opened up once I discovered sadness, the ability to cry, opened my experiential spectrum, and it also helped me understand others more.
Yeah.
Right. So not having access to anger, where does that block me from being able to connect with? So yeah.
It often does. And I think that's another important place that can show us where our next growth edge is when we feel disconnected from other people, or when we feel we can't access a relationship with someone else for whatever reason. Yeah. You speak about the conditions, conditional love as opposed to unconditional love, and all the conditions we place in front of our own open heart.
Your own expansion, yeah.
Yeah. Which I really love the way you describe that, by the way. So thanks for sharing your perspective. And so when we believe, this person isn't keeping eye contact with me, and therefore I can't connect with them. And so the condition is prolonged eye contact for me to open my heart to this person.
Right. I'm not opening my heart if they don't look at me.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Because my story says they think I'm not attractive, or they think I'm not worthy, or they think I'm not intelligent enough, or whatever the story is that I'm making that puts a condition in front of me opening my heart to this person. And so that projection of what the other person believes about me comes from within me. So that's why that's a good place to look at and say, I can't connect with this person because they think I'm stupid. I must think I'm stupid because that's what I'm projecting onto them. So where do I feel that I'm stupid? Which area of my life do I shut down because I think it doesn't know enough? And can I actually create a space for that part of me to explore life, and learn and provide that support
Yeah.
that a father would provide. You know, that archetypal father provides this space for their child to explore life in a safe way.
Yeah.
You know?
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Okay, so like bringing this all kind of back, I want to bring it back to self-love. And the reason so is that I actually believe that and understand this even from a mathematical point of view, from my Taoist understanding. Love is the root problem on the planet right now. And ultimately it's self-love. You cannot unconditionally love others if you do not unconditionally love yourself, right? So we practice by removing the conditions on the self, and then it's like when we open the eyes, the conditions seem to fall away on when we observe the greater self. And this has kind of been also taught by someone named Master Chen, who taught us in Taoism, and that was really prevalent in even just the group we had, which is a group of like 18 people. Self-love was the missing link between everything.
Yeah.
So I'm not even sure where I'm going with this, but self-love seems to be the root issue.
Yeah.
How do we bring that back? Like, in our communities, we do all sorts of stuff. We just tell each other we love each other, but we also like dance and do all sorts of stuff. But like, I don't know. It's like everything has to revolve around this. How do we heal it so that we love the self?
Yeah. Well, it comes back to having the experience that it's possible to love apart.
Or even just starting with the belief that it's possible.
For sure. Yeah. And when we believe it's possible, even though we don't necessarily believe it,
like
we start drawing those opportunities to experience it to us. And of course, those would be scary.
Right.
Because if, there's a part of me that isn't good enough, doesn't know enough. And it was reflected from my relationship with my father, who says, no, this is how you do things. You don't know enough. I will tell you how to do things. Even though he's well-meaning because he wants to be efficient, or he wants it to be done really well, or maybe he's on a time constraint, whatever the circumstance is, the child's interpretation thinks, I'm not good enough. And the parent may not even notice that occurs. So it's not to blame the parent for this.
But are we essentially teaching people? Like, I would kind of argue it's a cultural thing. We teach you that you're not good enough. At some level, like, how a baby is born and they're like perfect?
Yeah.
Right? It's a baby.
Yeah.
Then at some point, and I don't know when, you just start telling the baby's perfect. Oh, it's perfect. It's very perfect. And then all of a sudden, at some point, they're not enough.
Yeah.
It's not,
or the baby's annoying, or
now you have to, there's conditions. Now it's like you grow up and you're not good enough the way you are.
Yeah.
There's work to do. And then we get into the whole societal structures. Like, you can always trying to improve, and that's kind of, I think, sometimes the challenge. Like, there's always something to improve. So how do you love yourself fully if there's something to improve? Yeah.
So with that example of that part of us that shut down, and that we believe is unlovable.
Yeah.
So that's the belief at some point that gets ingrained in us, is that I can't love this part of myself, so I'll hide it. And at the time, it doesn't feel, everyone has their own experience. It might feel really traumatic. It might just feel like, well, duh, I'm going to put this part away because I don't get love if I express it. So I'll just put it away and I'll express myself this way instead, because I know I can get love this way. And so we put that part away, but of course that part's a part of us, of who we are fundamentally. And if it doesn't get expressed consciously, it comes out sideways and gets expressed in a way that we don't have an awareness of, or it develops some schisms in our psyche, or some addictions, or a void, or whatever it is. And we all experience that at some point in our life, like this thing that we're missing and that we want.
Yeah.
And that's often self-love. A part of ourselves that isn't loved
needs love.
And so you go back to that part, you start to understand the pressures it was under to make that decision to hide. And then you start bringing awareness to that having happened. But of course, over time, we've reinforced the belief that it doesn't deserve to be part of our expression.
Right.
So there's a whole process of softening our ability to receive and to express it. And so there's that whole work of just having awareness around it. And once the awareness is there and we soften our heart to be more receptive to it, and often it comes with some cathartic insight or emotional expression that allows that energy to move. And what's also important to kind of seal the deal is to be able to express that part and be loved.
Totally.
So either by ourselves or someone else.
I think it's really helpful when there's others to witness it.
Totally.
Right. That's something I really learned this year.
Yeah.
The being a witness process. When nature witnesses itself, it changes the reaction to it all. The observer changes it.
And I would echo and amplify what you said about being in community and the things we do, when we go out and we dance, for example.
Yeah.
We dance in all sorts of ways that are weird.
Well, just you,
just
right?
me. Okay, gotcha. I'll speak from my own experience.
No, I'm pretty freaky.
and it's those parts of us that want to move and be seen and be expressed. And when there's a whole group of people who don't give a shit. In fact, they celebrate that weirdness and they celebrate the unique ways that the body moves or that the voice expresses itself or that, poetry or photography or whatever the artistry is of our lives, that people invite it and are encouraging. So important to help us to accept those parts of ourselves as well.
Yeah.
But it really begins with the acknowledgement that there are parts of ourselves that need love, and I'm ready to love those parts, which also means I'm ready to face the shame. I'm ready to face the fear.
Yeah.
And we often need support in order to do that. And that's part of what counseling is there to do. And what I want to help people
That's what you do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what are we'll wrap this up in just a sec here. This has been an incredible conversation with you.
Yeah, thanks.
But what are some of the things you're doing in your life that are good practices that are helping you in your own evolution?
I definitely have been conscious of leaning into situations that are not very comfortable.
Okay.
So noticing those relationships that provide a little bit of an edge that I feel I want to shy away from.
You're leaning into them.
I lean into them. I become curious about the person, and I go through that contemplation of what is it about them that throws me off, that I feel is unreachable, and start to be really honest with myself about how I see myself. Which isn't always an easy thing to do. Sometimes we need someone else to reflect that back to us, someone we really trust to just give us some feedback about how we are in the world. Yeah. So finding people that I can trust to give me honest feedback is important. Spending time with myself and contemplating, journaling, writing is important just to get the flow through, especially when there's an emotional charge. I'll just start writing out exactly what I'm thinking, like this person did this to me and I can't believe it. And then after I'm finished writing, I'm like, oh, there's the thing I'm judging them for that I'm projecting. So even just that process of outpouring helps me to see more clearly what my inner conflict is or my inner block is. So that's a really good tool.
Beautiful.
For me, it's very much in relationship that I find that next step of what I'm being shown requires more love. That's a part of myself. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah. Yeah.
Cool, man. Thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah. And I just want to say, like, that's what's so beautiful about this kind of work is relationships are accessible to everyone all the time. It's just about recognizing that that's just a mirror to who we are. and that whatever experience we're having in relationship is an opportunity for us to grow if we want to take it. And even noticing if we don't want to take it is like super interesting to me too. And it's like, oh, I can love that part of me that doesn't want to take the opportunity to grow right now, because that part of me needs love too.
Well, you're a new friend and you've come into my sphere, and so there's some opportunity going on right now.
Yeah, totally.
I'm going to get to the bottom of this.
I'll do my best to reflect honestly to you.
You've been doing great.
Yeah.
Really good.
Good.
If somebody wanted to get a hold of you, or maybe do some sessions with you, how do they do that?
I have Instagram, probably an easy way to go.
Instagram?
Instagram.
What's your top pick?
It's the easiest way. I think people are just, it's an easy connection.
Cool.
You can see some of my writings on tarot and,
oh man, we didn't even get into any of that.
Yeah.
Tarot, astrology, all that stuff.
Yeah.
This guy's a wizard on all that stuff.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know my stuff with all like that, but.
Well, I do my part. I do my interpretation of those languages, because those are just symbolic languages as well. So
okay, well, I will put the link in the description.
Yeah. B Forest is the
I won't
tag.
remember this, but I'll put it in.
Forest. Well, now it's recorded, so you won't forget.
Okay.
I'm working on my website right now because I have my certification as a counselor. I can include that as part of the offerings. So that's in the works. But yeah, that's probably the easiest way to get a hold of me.
I'll do a Taoist reading for you, and you do
Sweet. That sounds like a great.
What would you do for me? What kind of reading?
Well, one of the things I'm offering is called a Terastrology reading. So it includes a reading of your chart and the intuitive messages that come through. You know, again, the symbols that pop out to me for whatever reason as I tune into who you are and your energy. And then during the session, we do a tarot spread. And oftentimes, it's kind of uncanny how relevant whatever theme you're bringing forward is being shown through the symbols on the cards and have been kind of like intuited through my exploration of the chart. And oftentimes I bring in a lot of my practices as a counselor just to allow for whatever needs to move in that moment. It's not exactly a counseling session because it's mostly me speaking, but that's one of the offerings that I have.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I look forward to it.
You want a hug?
Yeah. You move the mics. Thanks, brother. Yeah, man.